So listen to the premise of Dragon Day and then decide if it sounds like another movie. So basically this follows a family as they are kind of moving out to a remote cabin in the woods somewhere in kind of rural America, and it just so happens on this particular day there's actually an invasion by a communist country and America is taken over. Does that sound like another movie? Are you thinking of Red Dawn? Well, you'd be right, but unfortunately this film is not really like Red Dawn in other than the premise itself. So basically the central character here is played by Ethan Flower, and he's this kind of ex-NSA guy who is kind of fallen on hard times, so to speak, and has kind of moved out in this kind of like country, quite a large home, and now he's found some Mexican hiding in a closet who's apparently the renter there, whatever. Anyway, and it just so happens that China has decided to invade the US basically because America is, 3 trillion or whatever in debt, and China has decided to collect. But unlike, say, Red Dawn, the way they go about this isn't through force. It's basically through manipulating technology, and all these kind of made in China kind of electronics that we've seen over the years have all secretly been implanted with a way to essentially disable the kind of Western civilization, and that's how they'll do it. So unlike, say, Red Dawn, which is kind of a much more of an action film, this one is, I guess you would call it both a low-tech and a high-tech thriller at the same time. So what's it like? Well, unfortunately, it's not a particularly exciting movie because there's literally barely any action in this film at all. So if you're thinking it's going to be a Red Dawn sort of clone, it ain't. There's barely any action. I think there's kind of, not even really an action scene. There's one sort of scene, or maybe 1 or 2 scenes of violence, but not really action, so to speak. So don't go into thinking it's going to be an action film. So it is quite a slow-moving film, and I think a lot of people will probably find it a little bit boring. It doesn't help the acting is terrible. The best actor here is actually the little girl, the little daughter of this couple, who I think was pretty good. But the rest of the actors, particularly the wife, are just beyond awful. Beyond awful. Actually, the Mexican guy wasn't too bad, but I could understand what he was saying, so who knows. So there you go. The acting is particularly bad, but what really irritated me the most was the script, because it just the way people react in this film, I just don't think is so far removed from I think any type of realism. So this is, I guess, mildly spoilery. So we see some people who are basically complacent with the kind of the Chinese government, but they just seem to turn so easily and turn into, especially the police characters here, who kind of know what I'm talking about if you've seen the film. They just seem to turn into ruthless killers for no real reason, to be honest. I mean, and as the film progresses, we see more and more people who just seem to have sort of flipped sides. And yes, I appreciate the premise here is that technology has been essentially wiped, or anything involving computer chips at least. So but even so, I just can't buy that you would have this large amount of people really just flipping sides and kind of being this pro sort of invasion force, so to speak. And some of their technology as well, I think, is a little bit far-fetched. So I'm no techno buff, so I could be wrong about that, but it just seems a little bit too convenient in some respects. So it did have an interesting premise, I think, and it maybe explored things in a different way. So if you were kind of a fan of the Red film, and I think there's another one, an Australian one, which I forget, of Tomorrow or something it's called, something like that. It's again a similar sort of movie. And actually the Red Dawn remake actually had, originally it was going to be China that was invading, but they changed it to North Korea. So it's almost more similar to the remake in one way. So you may like it if you're a big fan of those, so don't be expecting the action. Overall though, I think it had some major problems in this movie. It had a good idea, but I don't think it was executed anywhere near to what it could have been. So I'm just going to give this movie a 3 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.